Hello, everyone. I'm going to start by getting all of you to introduce yourselves and just give us one sentence on what your title actually means in real life. What do you actually do? I'll start with you, Lauren.
All right, hi, I'm Lorraine. I'm at Yahoo. You won't forget because I got purple shoes on, so that should be your nice little reminder. I'm a data strategist at Yahoo. What that means essentially is I get into the weeds on everything under the data umbrella, whether that's privacy or data tech or even our data products. And then the main part of my role is taking that to brands and agencies, helping them through their own data transformation and their data strategies.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm Head of Commercial Transformation at Paramount. Is that working? So essentially I set the commercial strategy vision, and then I work on deploying initiatives spanning data monetization, measurement, innovation, and people and process to get us from current state to future state.
Hi, I'm Annabola. I head up digital experience at Big Red Group. Great question on what I actually do. I feel like I'm a little bit of a ring-in in today's session. I'm on client side. My background came from direct marketing, and essentially I am the person that's responsible for all of our first-party data ecosystem and what we do with it. So it's my job to create the proposition to make sure that everyone subscribes, stays subscribed, make sure that we get them in compliantly, and then how we actually activate that data. That also encompasses slightly random things like our review ecosystem and all of our MarTech activities and our MarTech tech stack.
Thank you. I'm Nick Hinchley. I'm the Head of Data and Technology for Sydney at Essence Mediacom. My role, very basically, is allowing our clients and helping our clients to leverage data and technology within their media activation, basically making sense of all the awesome stuff you've heard today and helping our clients use that.
Hi, I'm Bella. I look after data partnerships at the Trade Desk. Essentially, we have a marketplace of data offerings, and I'm one of the two that are looking after those vendors. So it's a fun, friendly role.
Nice. Anna, you're not random on the panel at all, because actually, we have conversations between publishers, data, tech, data clean rooms, collaboration processes, but all of those things really come together to support brands talking to their customers. And I mean, we've been using data in the world of advertising since digital was born, and we know how important it is. We are all going through this kind of challenging few years where the infrastructure that we built and the ecosystem that we built over the last 2 decades is being challenged. So we can't really be data cowboys anymore, and we've got to take into consideration, not just what advertising and marketing wants to do, but you have to work with your IT teams, you've got to work with your legal teams to kind of define what those collaboration solutions will look like. How have you made that work in your organization? What were some of the key challenges you've had to overcome?
Okay, so I might answer it in 2 parts. I'm going to talk about the good first, so how have we made it work, and then 2 key challenges and a couple of top tips. How have we made it work? So, and I think you've actually heard some of these themes. It was really interesting listening to the earlier panels, because there is no silver bullet. It is hard. You have to do the hard work. That's the essence of it. But collaboration has absolutely been key. It's no longer enough to throw it over the fence to legal to approve at the last minute. So find new ways to collaborate with people that you're not used to collaborating. From a marketing perspective, find new ways to collaborate with your tech teams, to collaborate with your privacy teams, to collaborate with your advertisers, to collaborate differently with the rest of your organization. And the reality is that as marketers, we love running workshops, we run them really well. They don't always work for data and engineering teams the way that we've traditionally run them. So find new ways to collaborate with very different departments that have very different KPIs, very different values, and see the problem very differently to you. And the second one is get the basics right. So you have to be very, very clear, because you're working with areas of the business that you haven't worked with previously. Be very, very clear on your metrics and your measurement. Be very, very clear on your why, your how, your what, your when. It's no longer enough to have this great vision on one slide that has 6 words that everyone's crafted perfectly. You need the how, what, when. Everyone needs to understand exactly what that's going to look like. And finally, and again, I think a couple of the other speakers talked about it, but for me, people, process, data, tech, in that order every time. Every single organisation I've walked into has more than enough tech. They don't have the people, they don't have the process, and they don't have the data to actually activate it. And as much as I love our tech vendors, anyone can buy the technology if you've got the money. Not everyone can use it with people, process, data in a way that creates competitive advantage. So people, process, data, tech, in that order every time.
Thank you. Nick, you do something, quite similar in the sense that as an agency, oftentimes your brands, your clients will look at you to help navigate this kind of ecosystem. Oftentimes as a media agency, you tend to be plugged into a media team or a marketing team. How do you bring a wider cohort of the business to the table to collaborate?
Yeah, I think we've definitely kind of gone from data being used very much kind of within the implementation and trading teams, very much that kind of last part of the conversation. And now when we're speaking to clients around collaboration and the use of first-party data, all of a sudden you've got these extra people in the room that need to be across it. So it's bringing a lot of change with how we operate and how we work with our clients. In terms of, I suppose, our organisation, and I'll use the kind of people, process, data, tech. It's quite a good launch pad. We're investing in people within Essence MediaCom, but also within the wider Group M. I'm luckily to be part of a lovely team that set up at the back there. And our agency's invested in that over the last year to make sure we've got the right people on board. From a process perspective as well, we're working on bringing the use of data further up. Again, kind of trying to take it out from that very last moment within trading, bringing it all the way up through to how clients brief us, how it helps inform and works within the strategy as well. From data and tech perspective, obviously, we've got investments within the group there. We've got acceleration from a Group M that's launched as a data and tech consultancy that helps with a lot of our tech deployment and Google services. So we, a lot of investments there. In terms of, I suppose, the challenges, similar challenges to what we're facing internally when working with clients is just how do we get the right people in the room? How do we make sure that the use of data and how we're talking about it is brought further up the process? Like I said before, thinking about it within how they're briefing the media agencies, how they're briefing us is really important. So, we've got a lot of clients that are well on that journey and, they've integrated their teams internally, and a lot of clients that are still working through it. A lot of them have great ambitions, but, there's a lot of organisational structures and ways of working that need to be changed and addressed.
That's fair enough. On the platform side, Lauren, what have you noticed has changed in terms of working with clients in activating their first-party data in recent years?
Wrap it.
I'm not going to wrap this year. I'm sorry. Maybe later we can have a little freestyle if anyone wants to. The thing about first-party data, first of all, I should say, over the last year, I've been really encouraged with how much more we've been talking about data compared to just 12, 24 months ago. A lot of people are much more engaged in it, which is fantastic. But first-party data in itself has sort of become this golden egg as a solution for cookieless. But even a golden egg has the risk of turning into just a plain old omelette, right? If you don't know what you're doing with it. So I think when it comes to first-party data strategies and making sure we're doing them correctly, there are two main considerations that if you're a brand or an advertiser or an agency that you should be thinking about. That's, am I getting enough scale, which was touched on by, I think it was Chris maybe in the last panel, and am I getting a quality return on this investment? So let's talk about scale for a second. We've already spoken about the non-addressable disparity we're going to see. We're going to have approximately a year from now, at least 70% of online ad impressions being non-addressable. Essentially, that means that any customers, majority of your customers, are not going to be able to be reached with any of the deterministic ID solutions. If we're going to go with a surfing analogy, which I kind of wanted to get on board with, it's sort of like surfing with a bodyboard, right? You're not going to get very far. But, sorry, I heard some groans there. Whatever. Non-addressable solutions, I mean, JJ was touching on some before. You've got contextual targeting, you've got seller-defined audiences, and that's great, but for first-party data, you really need to go beyond that to get the most out of it. So in my opinion, that's where machine learning comes in. So a great option that you have is to bring your first-party data in and match it with a powerful ID graph and then build a model off that. That'll then allow you to infer, and suddenly you have the capability to target and to measure and to create audiences in both addressable and non-addressable environments in a privacy-compliant way. I really think that if you're putting together a first-party data strategy and you don't incorporate a solution for non-addressable supply, you're really doing yourself a huge disservice. This needs to be non-negotiable. Then the second consideration is the return on investment. So obviously, if you get your ad in front of more people, you're hopefully going to have a more positive return on investment. But what we're seeing is that brands are often maxing out their budget before they can do anything that's actually exciting or innovative, getting their plain omelette, so to speak. What was my point? Oh yeah, sorry. We know that MarTech is expensive, right? If you're talking about CDPs, your clean rooms, it is expensive. But are you conscious of the additional costs or the hidden fees that you might be paying to activate that data? So when I'm talking about additional fees, I'm talking about things that should be standard practice. That might be something like your data onboarding, your data matching, even excessively high fees for data activation on lines. And those things are getting charged before even a single ad impression has been served. And that's quite scary, I think, that we're paying so much. Had a little brain break. My brain's decided to go surfing, I think. I think the point I'm trying to make is that if we want to be innovative and if we want our first-party data to go further, we need to make sure that we are getting a quality return on our investment and not just on what's left of the investment at the end.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think so many organizations look at that investment and try and measure a return on such a short term, say, campaign or even a year one, when actually it's a much longer investment and it's not necessarily always kind of measured right in terms of where we should be looking at that return. Bella, also on the platform side, and I mean, you guys, we've been working with you on leveraging and activating first-party data for, I don't know, however long the Trade Desk has been operating for. What has changed? Do you think that we're headed in the right direction? Do you find that maybe there's great solutions that are not being utilized properly? What's the vibe at the Trade Desk?
I feel like debate club has just commenced because we have two platforms of similar questions. I'll try to not copy or take anything that Yahoo said. But for us, I mean, like I think 2022 and 2023 was the year where everyone was discovering like what a CDP is. They were upgrading from clunky CRMs and DMPs. We really had great discussions around what does a CDP do? What can I do with my data? Do I need a warehouse? Do I need a lake? Like, what is data? What am I doing with it? We had a lot of people who had really strong data sets within email marketing platforms, for example, who were like, yeah, cool, I now know my customer really well, but in fact they didn't. They didn't have that one view. So this year's really nice because a lot of brands that we're working with at least understand maybe 80% where their data sits. They're now chatting with their sales team or they're chatting with different parts of the business to understand the customer in a sort of 360 view, which is great. And so from our point of view, when it comes to activation of this, it's sort of a two-part attack perhaps to really get it right. The first is storage. Where are you storing it? How can we best integrate to get you the best kind of activation experience? So in some instances we're finding that advertisers have really epic CDP setups, good. Others have really poor CDP setups that are really interesting data warehouses that actually maybe it's better for us to source there. So I think the first thing that I'm now learning a lot this year around the activation story is where is your richest data set? How can we get it? It might not actually be in the most common place, it might be somewhere else. So it might actually mean tapping into your data team or data scientist or engineering team, product teams, someone else other than marketing to be like, what do we have? What can we do? Like, what can we get the best reach out of? So once we've worked out where you're storing it, how we're integrating it to bring it onto the platform, it's then about what's the most effective way to like juice that orange. And for us at least, and I think a lot of people in the crowd hopefully can kind of attest to this, is the idea of leveraging that first party data as the seed that starts the campaign off. Then depending on kind of what fancy platform you're using, you should be able to do a lookalike audience of that to get a next layer of scale. Going again on top of that, there might be AI or machine learning within platforms that get us even broader scale, again, across a really qualified audience, but still a lot more scale. So once we've sort of sorted out the strategy there, possibly it's a 3-part series, for us at least, we find it really important to not be limited by channels or boundaries or whatever. For us, having an ID solution to underpin the whole thing is really, really helpful because we're having consumers hang out in locations that don't rely on cookies. We've got a lot of audio work, a lot of digital outdoor, you've got streaming services now. Like, there is so much going on outside of a cookie environment. And I love you, Chris, I love Google, I love what's going on there. But, you know, we've got to look outside those borders as well and not be limited by that. So for us, it's honestly about bringing together the richest first-party data that you have to start to seed the campaign, grow on that through lookalikes, grow on that through fancy further applications within platforms, and then underpin the whole thing with an ID solution. I mean, I can go all day, I got a case study, but I might save that for a bit later.
You can save it for, I'll ask you again. Emily, can I come to you from a publisher perspective? So we've talked about a lot of the kind of challenges in the digital ecosystem. I like Chris's analogy about the bricks versus the foreign liquids. From a publisher perspective, obviously signal loss is a concern and one that you've been working for quite a while in terms of mitigation strategies. But do you think that the Australian obsession with one-to-one marketing is something that we need to be continuing on? Do you think that type of strategy has longevity?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I think a one-to-one marketing strategy definitely will continue to be sustainable in certain contexts. However, I do think it will become increasingly challenging due to scalability and consistency of deployment. But I'm hoping, I guess I'm also cautiously optimistic in that hopefully any one-to-one marketing that is deployed is more respectful and is refined. For me, the starting point for brands and advertisers should really be their vision for the consumer or customer relationship, and that should inform the application of data and technology. I think marketers really need to think about what level of personalization is appropriate in different marketing channels, and they should be taking into account the consent that they have in place, the evolving privacy regulation, but also the existing relationship they have with a consumer or customer. So to use an example, I think utilising consented to data to talk to an existing customer and improve their product experience, or send them an EDM based on upcoming programming or an incentive is very different to talking to a consumer, a prospective customer, for example, where you don't have a relationship in a media channel. So I think there's a fine line between personalisation and intrusive marketing tactics. And I actually think the privacy and regulatory reform is a great opportunity for brands and advertisers to reassess that optimum balance. As it relates to signal loss, I think obviously different parts of the ecosystem are impacted differently. Yeah. I think from a publisher point of view, I think Phil touched on it in his presentation, but I guess we've been predominantly operating in the CTV space from a digital channels perspective. So we have a publisher-provided ID, which we utilise, which can be used in browsers where cookies are restricted, and that protects user privacy, given it can't contain PII or device IDs. So I think from our perspective, when we talk to our advertisers and brands, we prefer to adopt a deterministic cohort approach. Yeah. So using deterministic identifiers where possible, but delivering the most relevant communications at a cohort level rather than at a one-to-one if we're deeming it individual level.
Yeah. I mean, we did get to a point where we had become maybe a little bit on the creepy side, just a teeny weensy bit. So maybe backtracking some of that is not a bad idea for the industry. Nick, in your role, you've got to help clients kind of navigate all of this, but also navigate, okay, you have so many different technologies, they're all built differently, they have different solutions, you have different publishers who work with different solutions as well. What are you looking for when you're helping clients define these partnerships?
Yeah, it's complex. Sometimes it feels like a full-time job just keeping on top of what is out there, and there is a lot. But I think when we're working, obviously, on behalf of our clients, it really boils down to what is their business outcome, what is their business objective they're trying to solve, and working on solutions just to fix that. To Isabella's point before, often the first step is getting under the hood of the data they actually have. We're finding a lot of clients, naturally they go straight to kind of PII, CRM data as their data source, but there's a lot of other first-party data that they can be sat on, that can be activated, consumer panels, website data, things like that. So it's about understanding kind of what can we leverage from a client's perspective first. Then we go out and fill the gaps. Like, what else do we need to find out about our audience, our consumer? And that might be working with, obviously some of the media partners here, data clean rooms, collaboration, things like that. So it's a lot to go on, but it really boils down to kind of what is the objective we're trying to solve, and then more broadly, does that fall into, I suppose, the tracking and targeting, should I say, an audience side of things, or measurement? Because there's different solutions for both sides there.
Fair enough. On the measurement side, Anna, when it comes to showing a return on investment on your first party data strategy to your CFO and internal stakeholders, how do you do that? How do you unlock investment for technology? How do you get them to go, yeah, this is a good place to put the money? That's the end of my question, literally.
Okay. Just on personalisation and getting creepy, though, for a second, I don't know what I clicked where, but I am on the Pedro Raccoon train now. It will not stop following me around everywhere. So if anyone has any tips on how to get out of that algorithm, please see me afterwards.
Buy a new phone.
Measurement. I'm buying myself a couple of seconds because there is no silver bullet, and having done this about 3 times in 3 different roles, semi-successfully, context is everything. So one thing that I will note, very interestingly, is very few departments in an organisation are asked to prove investment on tech in the same way that MarTech is for some reason.
No one has to show a return on investment on Excel somehow.
No.
It's just an accepted cost of doing business.
Absolutely. And so one of the things I find very interesting, especially sitting in the marketing department, is other areas of the marketing team and other areas of the business are not having to show ROI in the same way that I am on a CDP purchase, which is the basis of anything to do with what we're doing today. So my advice would be understand the context of why you're being asked. Sometimes it's not just the return on investment, there's context around it. It's making sure that you're using it to the maximum point possible before you buy new technology, or you are improving and continuously streamlining your processes, people and data. Make sure that it's not just commercials that you're talking to. ROI is not just about the dollars. It's also enabling our upcoming privacy regulations, as an example. It's also risk mitigation and other dependencies across the business. So make sure that you've got a multi-tiered approach of how to approach it. And then going back to, I think, the previous, which is get your basics right. Be really clear as a whole program. So for me, from a digital experience perspective, as a whole program, what are your success metrics specifically? Because make more money is not a strategy. So be really clear on what your strategy is, be really clear on why you're doing it, be really clear on how you're measuring success, and then talk to that, educate and talk to it repeatedly, and question why you're being asked in the first place if you can.
Can I build on it a little bit, please? Yeah. Just interesting, the talking about ROI. I agree, it's not just about money. 100% agree with that. But what I've sort of seen and talking to a lot of brands about what their strategies and their solutions are is that, you know, if you're paying additional or numerous fees with the additional cost of your MarTech, your CDP, your clean rooms, that can become prohibitively expensive. And in fact, it's become a barrier for entry for a lot of brands. And, you know, we're trying to build this free and open internet, and we want to actually be building a transparent and economical internet as well, because we can't afford for the little guys to get left behind on this data transformation journey.
I think on that, and thank you for jumping in as well, like I think the other part to consider, and I think for us, we haven't solved it yet. We're on a journey of it, but we do measure success, and I think most organisations measure success at a channel level. And if we're going to move to an audience strategy and we're going to move to first-party data as being what underpins, then understanding how much value is being driven from your first-party data versus from your different channels is probably another way to look at it as well.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, there's a part of me that over the years I've seen so many businesses be burnt with sometimes MarTech and AdTech, and I think, you know, the reason of the point you're making around the context as to where the question is coming from is super important, because, you know, people who've invested in DMPs only to watch them become obsolete technology within the same decades do feel that burn and want to understand, okay, where's the longevity if I'm making this investment? So that context part is definitely important. But I think competition in this area is also great to make sure that people fully understand what they're paying, where they're paying it, because we do want a free and open internet for all. So I think we'll wrap up with one final question for everyone on the panel. I think it's a very easy one for us to kind of focus on. Yeah, we did this and it works really well. What have you done that was an epic fail? What have you done that was just either a waste of time or just did not quite work out?
You're looking at me, so I think you want me to start.
I'm looking at you to start, yes. Also, the shoes are incredible, so I can't stop looking.
And I got them on sale.
So nice.
Talk about big wins. Epic fails, gosh. No, I'm not going to do the surfing analogy. I would say the biggest learning, let's say, that we've had from being out in market is how complicated what we all do is, right? There's a certain type of brain in this room who actually like enjoys this stuff, but probably most people who aren't in the room don't have that same level of passion. And I'm sure if any of you have stood in front of a crowd, you've like immediately when they've said data, you've seen their eyes glaze over and they go off to dreamland. That's been our biggest challenge, is how do we communicate the importance and the significance of these changes and actually inspire action? Basically we've been doing it for years and not had that big of an impact because as an industry we can all agree we've dragged our feet here. So what we're doing now is a bit of a different technique, and we're trying to talk about it in the sense of your business as a whole and your business's data maturity as a whole. And I think when we talk about data maturity, it comes down to your internal business data culture. So you want to make sure that your CEO, your CFO, your CTO, and your grad, your first level entry, understand what's going on. They understand who their privacy person is. They understand what your data governance practices are internally. And they are on board with the transformations as you're taking them through. So I think that change in framework and change in conversation and sort of hand-holding of brands through building up their data culture to then launch pad them, I guess, is that the word? Launch them onto this journey. That's my change.
Thank you. I was like, don't ask me what the word is.
I think I'll probably, based on what Anna said earlier, people and process is probably our biggest learning. So I'll take a kind of commercial route. But I think for any kind of data use cases, engaging the relevant stakeholders up front, whether that be the investment team, to make sure that any data strategies can actually be deployed effectively off the back of the build, so that they can actually be operationalized.
Nice, thank you, Emily.
I've got a QA fail. Won't name names, but in a past life, not in a current role. In a past life, our tech worked, our data was fine, the people were right. The process did not QA deceased customers out of the process, and a win-back campaign with the headline, "We'd love for you to come back," went out. So,
I think you win on this question.
in case anyone, so how you guys are feeling right now is pretty much how I felt in my, I think, 3rd year as a marketer, so this was a while ago. I had to explain that to the director at the time.
Wow. People process.
People
Data
process.
and tech. Okay.
I'm definitely not going to top that in terms of, of that. I think for me, it's more of a learning, and it really taught, I suppose, the responsible use of data. In that, just because you have it, just because you have first-party data, doesn't necessarily mean you have to use it or should use it. Obviously that kind of goes against using it responsibly. We often find clients trying to shoehorn data into campaigns where there's just no need for it, and obviously that just kind of leads to a lot of problems. So you just got to really think again back to that, the outcomes and the objectives you're trying to solve for. Does data help solve that? If not, it's fine to kind of leave it and kind of continue as normal.
Strategy, for sure.
So today we've heard a couple of doom and gloom moments, and my learning is around reading the room when it comes to telling bad news. Prior to my life in media, I was a lawyer, and when I was a baby lawyer, I had to tell a company that they were about 2 days away from ASIC closing them down. It's a really sensitive topic, and obviously, much like with the legislative changes that are coming for all of us, there's going to be some really hard topics and discussions around that. My biggest tip is don't be blunt, don't be direct on that stuff. Really be soft, because the time I told my client this situation, there was a big plate of hot dumplings sitting in the middle of the table, and I was showered in them very, very quickly by the customer. So I've learnt since that moment to really be prepared in terms of how you're going to position something, what are the possible solutions out of this, how can we fix for it, what are others doing, like really just be ready when sharing bad news, and especially when it comes to data, because everyone's got a point of view, a lot of teams are going to be impacted, so yeah, learn to read the room, be ready, but bad news is okay, you know how to share it.
Wow. Thank you everyone for sharing. I think